All right, I don't know if this is the best way to put this or not, but I don't know if you even agree with this or not, but sometimes in life, in order to learn how to do something, it pays to learn how to do it maybe not the best way. You know, learning how to do something a way, but not the best way. So we're going to write a program right now, and we are going to write it a way. I'm not going to say it's the best way, but we're going to write it a way because I want to show you how some of this code is written. All right, so what I'd like you to do, please, is to start up Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new project, and it's going to be a console app. And for lack of better words, we'll call it family. All right. Save it where you normally save things. All right. So console app, I called it family. I'm just saving it to my desktop. All right. What we're going to do, and if you don't like, I'm going to use my family. If you don't like that, use your own. It doesn't really matter. You're not turning this in. I just want you to get used to what we're going to do because this isn't the way it's normally done. But I want to show you how it is possible to put everything into one file. In other words, we're going to have our class right under our main. That's not recommended, but it will work. All right, so that's what I want to show you. All right, then after we get done with that, and we'll see how long that takes because it's a bit of typing. All right. So after we get done with that, then we're going to start to look at, there's really two different applications that I'd like us to be working on as a class. Yeah, you'll have your labs, etc. One of them will very much be equivalent to one of the labs. But I want us to work on both a bank account type of class. Why? Because, you know, if you look at it in a hierarchical way, you can have a bank account. Okay, then what do you have underneath that? You can have a checking account. You can have a savings account. You might have, for example, a retirement account and or an IRA account. And then checking account, some checking accounts are interest bearing, some checking accounts are non-interest bearing. So hopefully you start to see there's kind of a hierarchy that you can set up. All right? And then what I'd like to eventually do, all right, and there's some stuff in here we probably don't need, but when you think about it, all right, let's say that we come in and we create an employee class. All right, we've talked about this kind of thing before. You've seen it. We put about, what, 7 pieces of information in there? Something like first name, last name, ID number, department, hours worked, hourly rate, and gross pay. All right, now, when you think about those, forget for a second about the hours worked. Forget for a second about the hourly rate. Let's imagine that this is a big company. And at this big company, they have hourly workers. They have piece workers. They have commission type of people. All right. And I don't know what, hourly, you know, and maybe 1 or 2 other ones. Okay. So you start to see that, okay, every person, for example, has a first name, has a last name, etc. All right, and then every employee would have the same stuff, the first name, the last name. But every employee would also have an ID number. Every employee would also have a department they work for, etc. But then you'd start to take them and you'd start to build things underneath. Does that kind of make sense? Because that's what what the next chapter that we're going to go over in the book is about. Again, we're skipping chapter 13 and we're going to go over, or 12, yeah, going to go right into chapter 14. We may even do that tomorrow. I don't know. All right? But I want to start building this. So again, I called it family, putting it on the desktop. I'm going to keep the solution and the project name the same, and I'm going to click create. And what you're going to see here is it's going to give us this. All right. Now, what are we going to need from here? really the only thing we're going to need from here is the using system. And we're going to use our old friend using static system.console. That's really, those are the only things that we'll need. All right. A lot of the stuff that you end up creating in here, just so you know, a lot of the stuff that you end up creating in here is what's system. It's system stuff. That's why we need the system. All right. And one of the things under the system branch is system.console. So you'll notice if I type in using system and I hit a period, there's a lot of stuff in there. You may or may not have ever even noticed this. All right. Okay, so we don't want that dot. Now, oops. So what's going to happen here, the first thing is we're going to create 5-person objects. These are going to represent everybody in my family. Now, after we create the 5 people, we're going to create the class. The reason I'm telling you this is you're going to get nothing but errors when you create this. We could create the class first and then create the main, or create the main first, then create the class. I just decided, because it's in this order, that I'm going to create the main first and then the class. So you're going to get a bunch of different errors. When you do, don't worry about it. Okay? Just don't worry about it at all. All right. So I'm going to come in here into main. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate 5-person objects. Okay? And you get, well, what's a person object? You're going to know that in just a minute. Every person will have a first name, a last name, a social security number, a height, a weight, an eye color, a hair color, and a gender. You with me? All right, so that's what we're assuming every person has. So with some people, we may not know that information. Okay? I mean, it's just the same kind of thing. If that confuses you, I don't think it does, but if it does, sometimes you get hired into a company. And I'll tell you something, this is a little forward thinking for all of you. Let's assume that it's the whatever semester you're going to graduate in. Okay? And you're going to graduate in a few weeks. And you actually start interviewing for jobs. This is, in my opinion, so somebody answer this. What's the hardest question to answer at an interview? Anybody want to guess? How much money do you think you're worth? That's the hardest question. Because what the employer is trying to do is they're trying to get you to blink first. You know, my sister once went in. She's now a judge, believe it or not, but she went in to get a job. She was clerking for a judge, so she was writing case stuff and whatever, and she went in to try to get a job at a law firm, and they asked her how much money she thought she was worth, and she said, well, right now I'm clerking for Judge so-and-so in Madison, and I'm making $38,000 a year. And they said, well, we'll match that. See, she blinked. See what I'm saying? She already said that. So you don't want to do that kind of stuff. All right? So why am I telling you that? Sometimes you go to work for a company, you typically wouldn't start at a company where they hired you and you didn't know how much you were making. That's one thing I would never recommend that you do that. But what I'm saying is sometimes with some of the things about an employee, you don't know them. So I might be hired. I might get hired at XYZ company. They're going to hire me. They're going to pay me $50,000 a year. But they've got 5 departments and I could fit into 3 of them. So they may not have assigned a department to me yet. Does that make sense? Because that kind of stuff happens. All right. So we're going to come in here and we're going to create these 5 people. So I'm going to first say person, and I'm going to get an error because there is nothing like person. All right. So I'm going to say person, Jeff, equals new person. Now, this may or may not confuse you, but I said each person has a first name, a last name, a social security number, a height, a weight, an eye color, a hair color, and a gender. Each person has 8 things. How many things did I give me? None. Why does that matter? Because we'll be able to look at default constructors then. Okay, so let's just hold off on that. So So here's an example of a person object who has 2 of the 8 pieces of information passed in. You all hear me? It has 2 of the 8 pieces of information passed in. All right, so I'm going to put in the next 3, and I'm just going to pass in all 8. Okay, so I'm going to have to make this screen smaller because otherwise probably all 8 pieces. I guess I could put it over 2 lines too, but it's not going to fit otherwise. To my knowledge, these are none of my kids' actual social security numbers. I have no idea what their heights are, what their weights are, etc. I know my daughter does not weigh 0 pounds, but it's going to give me a chance to show you putting in an illegal value and how we can handle it. So right now I've got 3 objects that I've created. The first object has none of the 8 parameters passed in. The second object has 2 of the 8 parameters passed in. The third object has all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 8, but 1 of those 8 are invalid. Okay, I'm just going to copy this one down and make a couple changes. So I now have 5 person objects. Okay, I am going to put a comment in each one just so you know this. So I'm instantiating 5 person objects. All right, person Jeff has 0 parameters passed in. Person Sandy has 2 parameters, first name and last name, passed in. Okay. Person Taylor has all 8 parameters passed in. However, the weight parameter is out of range. Person Kenzie has all 8 parameters passed in. However, the height parameter is out of range. And then finally, person Chloe has all 8 parameters passed in. And no parameter is out of range. That makes sense? All right. And again, the numbers and stuff that's in here is not that important. It's just that if you look, this one should be empty. If you look up on the screen here, that one should be empty. That one should only have a couple. This one should have that field out of range. This one should have that field out of range. And these should all be valid. Okay? All right. I mean, I could write different routines to do this stuff. I'm not. I'm throwing a bunch of garbage into main. So I'm going to say here, output all person objects. All right. So I'm going to clear. Whoops. And I'm going to so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this 5 times. So the first time it'll write me, the second time it'll write Sandy, the third time it'll write Taylor, the fourth time it will write Kenzie, and the fifth time it will write Chloe. But the idea is when it is writing each of these, it'll clear the screen, then it'll write all the information, then it'll give me a read line, so it'll be sitting there waiting, and as soon as I hit enter, it'll clear the screen again, and then write the next person's. And then it'll wait, clear the screen again. Does all that make sense? All right. Now, I'm not going to run it because it's filled with errors right now. That would be kind of dumb. All right. Now, normally, from what we learned, we would come in here next, all right, and actually, we would have first come in here, don't do this, we would have right mouse clicked on here, chose add, went to class, put in person, put in all of that information, all right, and then done this. But I'm just showing you that it is indeed possible, instead of doing that, that I can come down. Okay, so I want to be inside of my program. Okay, so I want to be in class program, but I want to be outside of main. Let's see, 1, 2. In fact, I don't even want to be in class program. So I want to go right down. So look if you would, please. This is class program. See this? That's all up there. Sorry. That's all class program. Okay? We could change the name of that. It doesn't really matter. But down here now, down here. All right? Get rid of some of those blanks. No big thing one way or the other. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to now write class person. Now I'm going to write the class. All right? And I'm going to just hit enter. What you should notice, if you look up on the screen now, is not all of them, but a lot of these have gone away now. This one went away because that's one that doesn't have anything in it, right? These still have errors because they're expecting parameters, which I'm not providing. All right, so we're going to start filling this up right now. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some constants. All right, and again, I'm just telling you this. This is when I taught the class last year. This is the first example I went over with them regarding using object-oriented programming. I found it yesterday when I was looking for something else. I thought, well, maybe it makes sense to go over it with you guys as well. All right. So I'm going to have here const string def first name equals unknown first name. Sounds kind of stupid, but we're saying we don't know the first name. Okay? Well, if we have a def first name, we're also going to have a def last name. So in other words, please look up on the screen for a second. You all agreed I wasn't passed in anything, right? Nothing. It was just paren. So my first name will now be unknown FM. My last name will now be unknown LM. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm gonna be setting a whole bunch of default values right now, and they're just things I made up. I mean, I could have just said unknown. I could have said UFN for unknown first. It doesn't really matter. All right. I could have said anything I wanted to. So I'm going to have here const string def ss num for social security number, and I'm going to set that equal to xxx-xx-xxxx. So again, we're saying we don't know my social security number. Anytime we don't know the social security number, that's what should be printed. This is another reason that typically a field like social security number would be done as a string. Because if we made it numbers, we'd have to, we could put in 000000000. All right, you could do that, but that's a little confusing. Now, if for some reason I ever have to go back and check, I can check to see anyone who has a social security number that's XXX-XX, and it'll grab all of them. All right. Now, some of these are going to look similar to what we've done before. Const int, and I'm going to have this max weight, and I'm going to set it equal to 777. It's a pretty big weight. I'd agree with that at least. We're going to have a min weight, and we'll set that equal to 1. My wife is, I don't know any other way to put it, she is intrigued by this show that's on Tuesday nights on Fox called The Resident. So, of course, we have to watch that every Tuesday night. And we were watching yesterday, and they had a premature baby who didn't look like he was much more than a pound. I'm sure it was more than that. All right. But, again, if we had a brand new newborn, we're assuming that that's the smallest they can be. All right. We're also going to come in here and do a const int, and we're going to set a default weight. And we're going to set that equal to 175. And again, that's just a number that I made up. This whole exercise is just designed to be to get you, as we transition over from what we have been doing, which is known as basically kind of procedural programs where we've been writing functions, to object-oriented programming, or OOP, where we're going to be writing classes and objects, etc. All right, let's do the same thing then for height. So I'm just going to copy these 3 lines, and I'm going to have a max height that I'm setting equal to 96, which is 8 feet tall. All right. A min height that I'm just setting equal to 12. And a default height, which I'm just going to set equal to, whoops, I'm going to set that equal to 72. So I'm working here with inches. All right. So that's all that stuff. There's going to be 3 more things. So far, we've got first name, we've got last name, we've got social security number, we've got weight, we've got height. We've got those things done. We still need eye color, hair color, and gender. All right, everybody with me? All right, so we still have those. So I'm going to come in here and say const string, and I'm going to put in default eye color, and I'm going to set it equal to blue. You don't like that, you go, that's not fair, make it brown. Then make yours brown. Really and truly does not matter. All right. And I'm going to have another one, a const string default hair color, and I'm going to make that equal to brown. Finally, I'm going to have, this is a char, which means it's going to be a single character. All right? And I'm going to set that equal to M. Now, you all know this, or you should. I could have made that a string and put in a male or female. Let's make it F. That's fine. There. So, hopefully, one thing you'll all notice, please look on the screen. When we print out the information for me, this should be my first name, this should be my last name, this should be my social security number, this should be my weight, this should be my height, this should be my eye color, this should be my hair color, and that should be my gender. That should make sense to all of you. All right? All right. So let's go and create some regular variables in here. So I'm going to have string F name for first name. We could have called it first name, but string L name for last name. String SSN for the social security number. Int height. Int weight. String eye color. String hair color. And char gender. These basically are, just so you know, these are our instance variables. Because every person has these 8 things. And you might say, well, what about this? No. When you create an object, that object only has what you give it. You understand? So if I created an object, I'm not going to do this in this program, but if I came in here and I said, let's say I started to define methods in here, and I defined a method that was called eat. And you had to say what it was you're going to eat. All right, I defined another one called sleep. And that's all I put in. That would mean these people could only eat and sleep. They couldn't drink because I didn't give them that capability. So when you are writing object-oriented programs and you create objects, they only have the properties like these that you give them. They only can do the behaviors or methods that you give them. They can't do anything else. All right? And we'll see that as we go along in here. All right, the other thing too that I want to do, just to show you that this is in here, is I want to show you another kind of variable. So I'm going to write here public person count. Let's make it static. Public static int person count, and we'll set that equal to 0. Do I have to explain to you what that is? Every time we create a new person, we're going to add 1 to that count. Make sense? So when we get all done, it should be 5 because we've added 5 people. All right? All right. Now, let's come in and let's write the constructors. All right? There's going to be 3 of them. Why? Because if you remember, that's a constructor with nothing passed in. That's a constructor with 2 things passed in, and these are constructors with 8 things passed in. Does that make sense? All right. This is going to be good because then Luke can see if he remembers doing this stuff a year ago. All right. So we're going to come in and write our constructors. So first we'll have our no-arg constructor. What does that mean? That means public. When you write a constructor, you write the word public followed by the name of the class. What's the name of our class? Person. And if it's no arg, meaning there's no arguments, it's public person, paren. Now, right now, what's it doing? Not a flaming thing. Does that make sense? It's not doing anything. So if I went in here and printed out now, Jeff, it'd be blank, 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 blank. You know, everything would be blank. All right? So what do we want to do? Well, the first thing we want to do, I'm going to say plus plus person count. Okay? I just added a person. So I'm going to call a couple routines. I'm going to call fill names with default values, and then I'm going to call fill person with default values. Now that might look a little bit confusing. Look on the screen if you would. Does it make sense? This is going to fill in the first name and the last name. Does that make sense? All right. This is going to fill in the other 6 pieces of information. Why did I do that? Because this goofus here needs all 8 pieces, but this one here only needs 6. So I'm going to write another constructor under this that's going to look exactly the same as this, except it won't have that. Does that make sense? All right. So that's a no-arg constructor. Underneath that, we'll call this is not an official name, but I'm going to call it a 2-arg constructor. All right. And I'm going to copy this. You'll see why in just a second again. I just don't want that. Oops. All right, but I am going to pass in a string with the first name, a string with the last name. All right, and what did I call these over here? F name, etc., all that good stuff. Okay, well, notice I called them here FN and LN, and here they're called F name and L name. Would you agree they're not the same name? So I can just come in here in this one and I can type in this. F name equals FN, L name equals LM. All right. Now I'm getting errors here because I haven't written these routines yet. We'll write those routines in just a minute. All right. So that's an argument with nothing passed in. Or I'm sorry, a constructor with nothing passed in. That's a constructor with 2 things passed in. We also have our full arg constructor that's got all 8 things passed in. All right, so I'm going to write that next. Put that down here. And again, I'm just going to put here full arg constructor. All right, here I'm going to pass in the first name, the last name, the social security number, the height, the weight, the eye color, the hair color, and I'll just put it over 2 lines instead of 3. And then finally, the gender. Does that all make sense? All right. right, so I can get rid of that totally. And as you'd guess, now it'll be SS, what do we call that here? Let's call this, can you go back up and change this to SS number, please? Otherwise, we got to work with the word this, and I don't want to do that right now. All right, this is just meant to be a first exercise, for lack of better words. So this will say SS number equals SSN, height equals H, weight equals W, eye color equals EC, hair color equals HC, gender equals G. And that looks like I screwed up there. That should be that. What do I call it up here? I screwed it up here too. Notice now there are no errors here. You see that? And please look up on the screen. Notice how all those went away. All right. Now, there's still going to be problems. There's still going to be problems. And we've got to fix those. But we're getting there. All right. What I want to make sure you understand is, if I pass in, like I said, person Jeff equal person, this is the constructor that has to be called. The system goes and it looks for just paren. When I created that, it adds 1 to the person count. Then it says call this routine, which is going to fill in the first name and the last name with the defaults. Then it calls this routine that's going to fill in the other 6 fields with defaults. Then it gets to the second person. They've got passed in a first name and a last name. So it, again, adds 1 to person count, passes in the first name, or I'm sorry, adds, basically copies the first name and the last name in. The other 6 are going to be in that routine. Then for the other 6 people, first name, last name, social security number, height, weight, eye color, hair color, and char. All right. Again, I could pretty this up. It's fine the way it is. All right. So we've got that. So in other words, what we have done so far is we have written about half of this program. All right. So let's come in and let's write some of those auto-implemented properties that I told you about before. We're going to write an auto-implemented property for each one of these 8 things right here. The difference between the name of the auto-implemented property and these, the auto-implemented property will start with a capital letter. So this will be capital F, little n, capital L, little n, etc. Does all that make sense? So outside of that curly brace for in here, now I'm going to say create auto implemented properties. All right. These are typically public. All right, public. And I want to check in here and see if I did that. No, and it's fine. All right. We could have come in here, just so you know. There are some purists, some people who believe in object-oriented stuff that are like, you got to do it like this, you got to do it like this. I've told this story before. I don't think you two have ever heard. This is no joke. Years ago, at the school I used to work at, I went to a conference because we had money at the end of the semester. And it was a conference. It was a conference on the C programming language. It was a language I knew that we were bringing into the institution that I was starting to work at. And it was a very interesting conference. The people who did it were unbelievably bright. All right. And one guy got up there and said, we're coming up with a new version of C, and I think that in this version we should take and make this public. I don't remember what it was. And he got up there and he explained his rationale, and he got done and people clapped. Then the guy after him got up and said, I think that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life, and I think you're an asshole. That's what he said. So the two of them got up and they started fighting. And I don't mean like a little bit. They were punching the hell out of each other. The reason I'm telling you that is that's what this stuff means to a lot of people. It's that important. I was there with another guy I worked with, and he's like, you believe this? And at that time, it was probably in the mid to late 90s. We didn't have cell phones. We did, man. Everybody would have been there. That would have been a YouTube sensation that night. All right? And they pulled them apart, and they were fine 5 minutes later. But I just thought, wow, that's pretty weird. All right? But some of these purists would say we should go back to these instance variables, and we should make all of them private. So I will. I did not in the example, the copy that I have, but to be pure, you may or may not remember this, but one of the things I said to you yesterday when we started talking about this is a quick one-sentence definition of object-oriented programming is using public methods to be able to manipulate private variables. These are the private variables we want to manipulate. All right, so I made all those private. Okay, now I'm coming in here and I'm going to make my auto-implemented properties. So public string, fname, get, set. Okay, I'm going to let you type in that one, and then I'm going to show you a shortcut that you might use and you might not use. The Visual Studio IDE that we're using in here has some shortcuts in it. Now we could type this. We could just keep going, and that's got to be a colon or a semicolon. That's why I got the error. All right, sorry. But we could just keep typing. Okay, we could just keep, and it would be fine. I don't know if you consider this to be a good shortcut or a bad shortcut, but I'm going to type in this. I'm going to type in the word prop, P-R-O-P. Then I'm going to hit tab twice. Prop, tab, tab. See what it just did? It filled in that stuff for me, and it put my cursor on the word string. So I can just come here and type in string, hit tab again, and put in L name. See that? Now, if you think that's faster to do it that way, it's the word prop, tab, tab. I don't, maybe I'm just a decent typer, I don't know. But to me, it's just as fast to come in here and do it like this. But I've shown that to people. Wow, is that cool? No, it's not. All right. But if you want to use it, it's there for you. Right, and the last one is gender, isn't it? Yep. All right, so that's it. You might notice, if you look up on the screen here, and you probably have it on yours too, see how it says 0 references right there? That just means you've created the code, but you're not using it any place in the program. Did you hear me? I hate that, and there probably is a way to turn it off. I've just never looked for it. The system puts that in. It's not like I can highlight that. See, you can't highlight it and get rid of it. It's there. But like I said, there's probably a way you go in through your tools or whatever, and you can do that. I don't know what it is. I don't care what it is. All right? Let's write one more method, then we'll take a break. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here. We don't have that much to do. So. All right, we're going to say public and we're going to write void fill names with default, oops, fix that, with default values. Please stop for a second, look up on the screen. See how that one is no longer grayed out or out? We're going to write the other one too because we'll break both of them. It'll take 5 minutes. So that's it. So let's do the other one. What? Thank you. All right. And that one will fill in the other 6 things. What? Yep. No. It's however I put it up here. Just like that. Right? And that's it for that one. It's just filling in all the defaults. Now, if you look up on the screen here, what I'm going to do, I have no more errors. See that? But what I'm going to do is I don't want to print out any of these. So I don't want to print out any of those. But I want to be able to print me out because I'm all defaults. And I want to see if that works. All right? So save. Run this. Well, said family.person. I think I'm missing something yet. Okay. Thought I could impress everybody, but I impressed no one. All right. So we've now come in there. We have created our class, we created our constants, we created our instance variables, we created a static variable. Static means every person shares this. If I didn't put the word static there, every time I created a new person, it would make a new person counter. So if I had 5 people, instead of having 1 counter with a value of 5, it would have 5 counters with a value of 1, which wouldn't make much sense. All right? Because what static says is there's only one and you share it. That's what the way they set it up in the language. It's not just this language. Java is like that in the same way. So this is our person constructor with no arguments, so we call that fill the names with defaults and the fill the person with defaults. All right. Now I could actually, the Sandy one is okay too. because we passed in the first name, we passed in the last name, and we used the other 6 for defaults. So when we come back, we've got to work with these. And the reason that we have to work with those is as we go in here, well, what if we passed in a social security number that said, hello, or left it blank, or whatever? What if we put in a height that was 1,000,000, a weight that was 1,000,000? We have to handle that stuff. All right? So it is 8:56. Let's come back, please, at 10 after 9. We'll pick it up right here.